Quote, in my bag here, I have a foolproof method for controlling your black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that if it is installed correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. I've outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. These methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple little list of differences and think about them. On the top of my list is age, but it is only there because it starts with an A. The second is color or shade. There is intelligence, size, sex, size plantations, status on plantation, attitude of owners, whether the slaves live in the valley, on the hill, east, west, north, south, have fine hair, coarse hair, or is tall or short. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust, and envy is stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. The black slave, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self-refueling and self-generation for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. End quote. So that is the beginning of the speech that Willie Lynch gave on the shores of Virginia in 1712. The bank of the James River. Coincidentally, I was in Virginia for a long time, and the James River is a big deal in the area that I was at. Didn't know that that's where that happened, but feeling and understanding the climate there, it makes sense. So I'm talking today. I am a hip hop fan. I grew up in the culture. I breakdanced. Obviously a fan of the music. Did not participate in graffiti. Was not a DJ. Although I love playing and making playlists of music. But I am a writer. I am an artist. I have released music. Still currently composing, writing, and recording music. So I think I'm definitely a contributor and a partaker and a beneficiary of hip hop. And currently, one of the things that's big in the culture right now is the interaction between three of this generation's top artists, Kendrick Lamar, Drake, and J. Cole. And I don't really want to get deep in the history of the beef. I'll give a synopsis because it's important to the point that I'm trying to make for this. A lot of people are debating the most recent events. We'll say the first of the most recent events was a collaboration on Drake's latest album called First Person Shooter. This is one of the first times that we're seeing two out of the three seemingly collaborate and possibly aiming at one of the other big three. That being Drake and J. Cole on First Person Shooter. And mostly J. Cole, he didn't necessarily, from my interpretation of the song, it was more a competitive spirit speaking in the manner of first delineating himself, separating himself, and reiterating and stating his desire to qualify himself as the best or one of the best. And then the other part was, of course, he's collaborating on a track with another celebrated artist and speaking to that collaboration in high regard. Example is his bars about the Spider-Man meme, about him and Drake being the Spider-Man meme. And by proxy, Kendrick Lamar is not. Fast forward, Kendrick Lamar on the Metro Boomin Future project very aggressively addresses the first person shooter song in Kendrick Lamar fashion. Kendrick is very much, I don't even want to say aggressive. He's just very straightforward and to the point. And in his song, coincidentally, Future and Metro Boomin both have issues with Drake. So it was kind of fitting to have Kendrick pop out and do what he does on this song. Kendrick, historically, and we'll go into this a little bit, has an issue with Drake. But he definitely, I don't even want to say big bro, little bro, but he definitely is kind of sending Cole some information like, yo, watch who you stand next to. Which, if you're in, growing up in the culture and just being a black man, this is not an abnormal interaction with us in our our social circles growing up. It's like, there's normally, if you have a crew or you have a group of, young black males that kind of kick it and hang out, you may have similar interactions where, somebody might tap you on the shoulder and be like, yo, bro, we know this guy, he hangs around, he's with the crew, but, that may not be somebody that you want to stand next to because he's kind of shady, or, he doesn't have the same morals and guidelines that everybody else has, or he may put you at risk, or, there are tons of reasons why, we give warnings throughout the crew to certain individuals because we feel like they may be vulnerable. They may not be able to handle themselves if they're put in a situation by this individual. He's kind of unscrupulous, and if you don't know how to handle yourself, you could be put in a compromising position that you won't be able to get yourself out of. And I definitely get that energy from Kendrick on his verse. I don't feel like he was coming at J. Cole, and I think his energy has always been with and for Drake once there was an issue. And again, I'll talk a little bit about why I think that is later on in the podcast. And then, Drake really doesn't do or say too much purposely. And again, I'll talk about that. And then you have J. Cole, 2 weeks later, puts out a surprise album with a song seemingly put out to diss and respond to Kendrick Lamar's verse. Although to my estimation, Kendrick was not throwing shots or jabs at J. Cole, but I think the peer pressure and the internet pressure and social pressure caused J. Cole to, respond in a way that, quite frankly, seemed disingenuous. It did not seem like, it seemed as if he was responding because he felt forced to respond, not because he actually believed, one, that he was being attacked, or two, that he believed the things that he was saying in his retaliation. And that leads to this most recent development where on his platform in his annual festival, the Dreamville Festival, J. Cole went out and basically retracted his diss, apologized for his misstep, and recanted the things that he said in that diss, and basically said it was corny, it was lame, it was goofy. And there's plenty of clips of that on the internet. It's pretty big right now. So I'm going to talk about two different layers. I started out reading that quote from the Willie Lynch speech because I think it's important to understand or to overstand what's actually happening in our culture and why it's happening that way. But I'm going to work from the inside out. So let's start with, the spirit of hip hop and then what's going on with this interaction. So, hip hop, to a certain degree, has been competitive. There's a level of competition, but it's friendly competition. It's almost like sports. And I think there's a level of tribalism in all areas of society to a certain degree. Maybe not within family structure, but, there's a grouping. People with like interests kind of side with people with like interests. And if there's something opposing a force, they tend to rally together to express themselves and ensure the survival and the legacy of their thought process. And so that's pretty natural. Within hip hop culture, DJ battles, how you can rock a crowd, with your mixing and scratching and the records that you play and things of that nature, the type of crowd reaction you can get was something that was championed. And then as MCs, kind of moved to the forefront and became a thing, you have, similar types of battles with MCs being able to get a crowd rocking. And then it turned into more of a battle situation where MCs were kind of directly going at each other. Sometimes there were mentions where, an MC says something about another MC on a song, and then they go back and forth, song for song. Sometimes it's in an actual real interaction, similar to what we now see today as battle rap, where, a distant relative of, people playing the dozens, where within the context of rap, you are attacking the character and making light of or fun of the character of the person who you're battling for crowd reaction. And so we're seeing this in the modern era play out in this scenario with these three MCs. I think initially there was respect, definitely, appreciation for each other's creative process, because I think that they've all been on each other's projects. Drake was on J. Cole's debut album, In the Morning. Drake was on Kendrick Lamar's debut album, Poetic Justice. Kendrick Lamar was on Drake's second album, Take Care. I think J. Cole, his collab with Drake on First Person Shooter is the first time that they've worked together since Drake being on The Sideline Story, being on In the Morning with Cole. So they've all worked together in some sort of capacity as far as collaborating. So I don't think that that was the genesis of this. But I do believe that in my, short examination of the timeline, Kendrick came out with a verse on a Big Sean song called Control. And on that verse, as a true MC, Kendrick basically showed respect to his peers and then basically let it be known that, I respect all of you guys, and some of us are friends, some of us are just, we're peers, and we're in this space, and I see your skill level, but I'm the best. And if there's nothing else, I'm going to let you know that out of respect for you and your craftsmanship, and as skilled as you are, that within the spirit of competition, I'm going to do my best to show that I'm the best. And anyone who has competed in any type of sport knows that that is the ultimate sign of respect. The level with which you compete fairly against someone in that chosen sport shows how much you respect their talent level and that they deserve your absolute best. So within the spirit of competition, there was no shots there. It was simply, I'm a player, you're a player, we're in this game together collectively, but we're also in competition. Know that I'm going to give you the business. And I expect the same from you, but it's all rap. And there's no animosity. This is strictly in the spirit of competition. Now, there are some rap beefs that have some personal elements. There's animosity, and those are actual beefs. This is not competition. It's actually, I got a problem with you for one reason or another. And that is where there's a mixture of issues that cause this to be an explosive and possibly dangerous situation. Now, within the after the Control verse, nobody really responded. As far as the hip hop community, the people that were mentioned in that song, not too many people had a substantial response. But Drake, being the commercially successful artist that he is, he was asked about it. And in his reply on TV, he kind of placated to Kendrick and almost tried to lil bro him. Like, yeah, he's, basically acknowledging the skill of the verse, but basically saying that ultimately Kendrick is not seeing him on any type of platform with regards to competitive nature. Like, yeah, that was a dope verse, but you can't see me in these record sales. Your albums are not as good as mine. You're not making as much money as me. Basically, you're an underground artist, and I'm this huge commercial success, and I'm dope, and you average. And some people say that there is evidence out there, or that there's been reference to Kendrick possibly being a co-author or helping Drake actually formulate songs. So, and at the very least, I'm a person that you've collaborated with. You've been on my debut album, which is a classic. Good Kid, Mad City is a classic. So as far as critical acclaim, you can't really argue the fact that Kendrick is that one of them guys. So I think that the fact that had already happened, and for Drake to basically belittle Kendrick in that way, it's sort of like the dynamic of, again, within a friend group, You have somebody who's been, you know, we've all been in this situation together. We've kind of grinded together to get to a certain point, and then someone unexpectedly gets a huge boost and a huge amount of success, and then tries to portray themselves as never being associated with our group. And also within that, directly saying or implying that they're too big and that none of their success has anything to do with being a part of that group. And ultimately, it's the ultimate sign of betrayal and disloyalty, and just being very egotistical and selfish and disingenuous. Just very, it's not a sign of a quality person that's what you could do to the people that assisted or took part in your ascension. It's not about bringing people with you. It's about acknowledgement. It's about being honest about who you are and how you got there, and giving props. There's a lack of respect in what Drake did to Kendrick on that interview. And I think that having the knowledge, intimate knowledge of Drake and his creative process, and possibly knowing that, you know, one of the marks of being a top MC is understanding and the knowledge that you pen all your own raps, and knowing, you know, that that's not true for Drake, and then you to know that I know that's not true for you, and you still step out on a limb because you think your money and commercial success is worth more than the respect of your peers, and in this scenario, me. Okay, so now I'm about to show you. So I think from that point on, Kendrick made it a point that he's going to not necessarily expose, because I'm sure he felt like within the context of being a man and just being a hip hop artist, he's not going to go on TV and have a conversation. He's going to put it on, you know, he's going to put it in music. And in a series of unofficially released freestyles, the BET Cypher freestyle being one of the most poignant releases, to his famous The Heart series, he basically goes about informing all of us that quite possibly your favorite rapper is pussy. Excuse my language. That your favorite rapper is not who y'all think he is. He's soft. He shows very disloyal traits, very messy, very petty, definitely an opportunist, and not somebody that you would necessarily feel is overall a good guy. You know, unless you're one of those people who don't care about who you got to step on to get to the top and how much respect you need to show them. And I think that sentiment has carried on, and Kendrick has openly basically just challenged and said, okay, you know, I think you a punk. And I don't think that you want any of this, because you know I know what it is. But if you want to put me out there and make it seem like you the big dog and I'm a little pup, I'm gonna show you what it is in this hip hop arena. Like I understand, you know, the battle culture. And Drake has yet to reply. You know, Drake is not the person to directly address anyone unless he really believes that he can win. petty innuendo and passive aggressive bars, and sending shots that are there to impress females more than actual hip hop heads. Like there couldn't be any female hip hop heads, but I'm talking about the casual listener. People celebrate his Meek Mill diss, but in reality, he just said clever shit that women, people who consume a majority of his music, not that he doesn't have male fans, but he appeased to them. When you say slick shit, like that catty behavior is reminiscent of what stereotypically could be seen as a way that females deal with each other. And he was very catty. I'm not against the music. I think the music was good, but I think the motive and the way with which he tried to address Meek, you were talking about his relationship with a female that you probably and openly or backhandedly spoke a lot about wanting to be with. And you basically attempted to destroy that as a sign to show how much power you have over this person in their situation. Which again, to me, as a man, I think that's super soft. I think it's not honorable. And I think it just shows his character, like, as far as like, yo, if you're trying to get down and shoot the fair one over these bars, over these instrumentals, let's do it. Otherwise, stop talking. Because every time you open your mouth, I'm gonna spank you. That's what it feels. The energy is that Kendrick is on. And I think, unfortunately, J. Cole became a victim, of Drake's desire to utilize people around him and shield him from ever actually getting any scars. Because if you can convince another person that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So if you convince J. Cole that Kendrick was talking about him too, and then you have the whole internet, especially in the hip hop space, we just want to see a battle. We don't, and you have these people that are creating these narratives out of nothing just to see a battle. And it's horrible. But if I was to not really expound, but just give it up, like, very straight, and how I would talk it around people, like, Drake is a punk. And when Kendrick realized he was a punk for the shit that he did, he called him out on it. And Drake, understanding that he's on a different level in that space and does not want it with Kendrick, because he understands that Meek Mill and Kendrick are two different battle-tested MCs, and the way that he attacked Meek Mill and his relationship and, all that, Kendrick is not the one. You're going to have to come with these bars, and we're going to have to get to it. And I'm going to show you, because I know you ain't right all your shit. And so Drake goes about the business like he always does, of finding a backhanded way to impress other people with the way he wants to attack you. And I think utilizing J. Cole in that space is real shady. But it's on brand. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's the type of person, like, y'all about to have a problem because of whatever. It could be a business matter. It could be a personal matter. And the way that Drake's going to try to get you is to try to fuck your girl. Like, you know what I'm saying? So that's what I feel like his character is. And I think he embraces it. I think he understands that that's part of his brand. And again, it's very catty. It's very passive aggressive. It's very, like, I hate to characterize it as feminine, but it's a common way that we see women who have issues with each other, how they interact. So again, I just think that first, for Kendrick came out and basically put it out there. Everybody knew who he was talking about. And then you have certain media outlets who want to push because they know that a battle between between J. Cole and Kendrick lyrically is way more relevant than Drake versus anybody. So they're reaching because they really, whether it's they don't want to see Drake fall, or they also understand that the competition lyrically is there between J. Cole and Kendrick, not necessarily Drake. Drake is he's the vibey guy. You know what I'm saying? He hasn't been the bar guy for a minute. Although he can do it, I just don't think it's prolific. And so there's a level of I don't want to say social cleansing, but how different social groups manage, monitor, how they police themselves, and from a social standpoint. And this is where I'm gonna kind of segue through this explanation of examining what's going on within this rap beef to the other part of the pod, which is how does this relate to the Willie Lynch papers, the Willie Lynch speech. So J. Cole deciding to get on stage and basically retract his statements within the song about Kendrick and his music and, personal attacks against things in that nature. I think that it was a huge turning point. It was giant, but there's quite a possibility that the evolution of that mentality, it could grow exponentially, or it could be buried because nobody really cares about peace. War is profitable in so many more ways than one. So I think that, this conflict is incentivized. It's created and being made into an identity, so much so that even when it's not there, we try to put it there just so we can, put it in a pile and listen to it later. And it's sad. So again, I believe that Kendrick is definitely the person, the antagonist in the conversation with both of these individuals. And when it comes to Drake, he's telling him, yo, don't fuck with me because you're not the guy that you're portraying to everybody. And this not even a warning. This is war. Like, you tried to play me, now I'm about to really get at you. Step outside. You know what I'm saying? We need to run it. Let's shoot the fair one. I want to catch a fade. However you want to describe, it's a challenge. He's challenging Drake. When it comes to J. Cole, he's like, yo, you my dog, bro. Why are you standing next to this clown? Like, he played you. He's trying to use you to fight his battles and to shield him from getting any damage or drama. He's not helping you. This is a fake friendship. It's a fake alliance. He's really only doing this because he would rather send you out as the crash test dummy to do all of these things that he can't do, and then also he can remove himself from. Like, I don't think Drake is on this might delete later project. You would think, especially with the shot that Kendrick just sent, that if there was gonna be a place where Drake may respond, it might be on this Drake project. Not Drake project, but the J. Cole project, right? But that's not what happened. So, yeah, I think Drake is a sucker. Excuse my language. That's. I think Drake is not that guy when it comes to being a respected, battle-tested participant in the hip-hop culture. I think he's an opportunist. I'm not taking away from his talent because he is talented. He makes great songs, by himself and through collaboration. But I think within the realm of being an honorable person, again, and I don't know him, but I mean, within the morality of the music and the things that we've been exposed to, it doesn't seem like he's that guy. And it's okay. The truth is the truth, and that's all that matters. But bigger than that, so I think I've, pretty much given a synopsis of what I think about this interaction between these three artists. Shout out to J. Cole for, again, leveling up, manning, taking accountability and responsibility for his misstep in this space. And, on the same type of platform that he stepped out and did his business, he also stepped up and took accountability for that and apologized. And I think it's honorable. I think that's grown man shit. And anybody who is promoting the beef over that type of stuff, they're playing right into, quote unquote, the devil's hands. So, yeah. And that's the part I want to segue into with this. A lot of the things that were used to oppress us, we've learned through acts of survival, but also through lack of resources and connections to our actual origin story. We've learned to take those things and turn them into something that we can use and also celebrate. From having the scraps on a plantation being thrown to us and creating soul food, to now where we don't have to eat scraps, but it's celebrated because it's part of our connection to our past. Our legacy is eating the part of a pig or a cow that actually carries its waste. Like, that's a traditional food, is to eat pig or cow intestine. Like, that's crazy to me. But it's understandable. It's part of your history if your history is that you're a slave. So you're not looking and checking for your possible African dietary foundation. Your foundation is based off of slave food. Within the hip hop space, I think the interaction that men have in that space, the competition, the rhetoric, I think all of those things can be traced back to the implementation of the Willie Lynch theory. I think that what I shared in the beginning of the podcast with regards to the way that that slave owners were taught to control us, I believe everything that we're experiencing, especially in this moment, it within the hip hop culture, which is black culture, it's not the only part, but it's one of the biggest. How we're informed, when we say we shape culture, it's actually you're giving structure to how we are going to operate as a people. And, you know, it's astonishing how accurate this explanation of this strategy, how we carry it on today. And I quote again, and I'm going to break it down. I'm going to just take parts and then try to give correlation. We say hip hop is a young man's game. That, you know, the youth need to lead the movement and the older people need to step in the back and be quiet. And if there's any type of criticism to the youth, it's just hate, right? And if you want to correlate that to the part of the Willie Lynch speech, it says, I've outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. And then he goes on to say, at the top of my list is age, but it is only there because it starts with an A. Right? So using the difference in age as a way to control narratives and control ultimately a people. Like, you can use age and say, okay, it's old people versus new, it's new people versus old, and it creates a stalemate because no longer are we using those differences to help advance and forward and improve each other as a people completely. It keeps us, we're in place instead of forging forward. As far as, you know, each subsection has value. The youth have energy. They're informed. They're able to communicate what's happening now to people who may not be in touch with what's happening now. They have a connection to technology. They are the legacy of the older generation to carry on and continue forward progress in the time now and the future. Like, you have to embrace the youth, but the youth is guided by the wise, by the older. We've lived a life, we've had experiences, and we have wisdom, and you impart that wisdom and infuse it within the energy and the presence of the youth to propel the movement forward, to keep it going, versus there being infighting. All of these things within the Willie Lynch paper is how to utilize these things to self-propel the debilitation of Black society. And using the difference in age is one way. And in hip hop, it is very much magnified and very much, especially right now, used as a way to divide and be divisive within our community. The second is color and shade. I don't think it's accidental that Drake is light-skinned and Kendrick is dark-skinned. And how subconsciously they are seen by us. Anybody who has heard of the brown paper bag theory when it comes to color and shade, that is basically a way to glamorize those of a lighter complexion and characterize those that are darker skinned as ugly, or all the negative parts, you know, negative connotations were associated with those that were darker complected. Again, it's not just enough to this isn't something that was implemented for white people. This was implemented to be used amongst black people to cause division, divide, distrust, envy, all of the things that can be perpetuated without expending energy. So you basically subjugate the people and expend no energy to do it. Because the reality is there are more of us than there are of them. So the way to control us is to get us to control ourselves within the context of how they want us to be used. So, again, using color or shade, I mean, it's very obvious. Very obvious. You know, the standards of beauty amongst our women and amongst our men, you know, save for a few exceptions, you know, there is just even how we talk about ourselves and the stereotypical tropes of beauty, like what's beautiful and what's not, and how we modify our skin and modify our hair texture and, you know, basically create the illusion that we are black Europeans. That's the sign of beauty that is being accepted or being promoted. And it's, again, amongst us, how we choose and decide to support and love ourselves. It's crazy, diabolically genius. And it's crazy that that's 1712. It's 2024, and it's just as true now as it was when he first brought it out. I mean, intelligence. You have black scholars who, instead of trying to teach and nurture, they want to embarrass. They want to embarrass you into submission by trying to show you how dumb you are because you think the way you think. Dr. Umar, I've never seen him on a podcast where he wasn't trying to belittle and call someone a coon or call somebody this way because they did not agree with his idea of how the African American should move and be representative of a community that works together for their progress and liberation. Like, his thought process is the end all be all. Like, he's lived his life without flaw. And it's not even that. It's just, how dare you? You're no supreme being. So how dare you talk to someone? You know, there's a difference between actively selling out your people and then you don't agree with me, so that makes you a coon. I'm smarter than you. I have these degrees. I'm a doctor. I've done all of this research. Your research is within the European system. You weren't awarded that information through African American, through an African collegiate program. Like, this is, you went to these white people's schools and got your degree. Whether it's an HBCU or not, it was a school that was allowed to exist within the framework of American society, which inherently is designed with white supremacy in its genetics. So you're a product of that shit too. Dr. Umar. But in general, just if I take out him as a poster child or as a large example, just in general, we tend to spend a lot more time highlighting the perceived shortcomings of those who disagree with our philosophies, and like to attack in a way to discredit them and their level of intelligence, which is just not so. Because some of the wisest people did not have access to education resources. They may not even know how to read, but your grandmother who worked on a plantation can school you and give you jewels that will last you a lifetime and prepare you for what's next. But again, they use these traits, character traits, and the differences to handicap us. Because if you're intelligent, you should be encouraging, you should be nurturing, and you should be trying to teach people, not embarrass people until they submit to your line of thinking. Building a school is great. But if this person walks up, a black person walks up and they happen to be with a white person, or they have a child with a white person, and you're going to basically, through your platforms and your interviews and your thought processes, basically say that this person is a race traitor, their wife or husband that's white is racist, and they're a coon because they're not following what you believe is the path to the light for black people in America. And it's crazy. But people actually listen to that, knowing that that's what's going on, knowing that he's probably talking about you and some of the things that you may have done or not done in your life. No disrespect, but nobody's going to tell me no shit like that. That's crazy to me. You haven't lived enough life to tell me what I do and don't do, or who I should or should not love, or who actually cares about me and who don't. And I'd be damned if somebody's going to talk about my children that way. So it's crazy still. Intelligence. Size, right? Size of the person. We any way to cause a difference in their, either you're going to champion this person because of how big they are, or you're going to demonize them for how big they are. And it works both ways. Being too skinny, people thinking that you're sick. Being, well enough to be at work, but not well enough to actually work. Like, again, this sex, whether the slaves live in the valley or on the hill, east, west, north, south. I mean, if that's not gang culture to a certain degree, there's family elements within that. But we're claiming land that we don't own and fighting over it. It's amazing to me. Absolutely amazing that we're in these situations and we're not using or having any conversations with the reference points that make this shit sound so wild. So, it's just sad. It's sad. Status on the plantation. Are you a boss? Are you a house N-word? Or are you a worker? Are you in the field? Fine hair and coarse hair, tall or short. I mean, it's just all of these things are ways to separate us, divide us, and then pit us against each other until the real issue, which is lack of progress, lack of recognition, lack of connection to our own heritage and culture, and basically going off the idea that we have to, I don't say create our own legacy, but they basically stole us from our families, so we don't have a connection to our homeland. Most of us don't even know where that is. The genetics on a 23andMe, I don't know how accurately that connects you to, like, this is where your people are actually from. I think it's using genetic markers from two regions and matching them up. Like, these people from this region have this genetic encoding. You have similar genetic encoding. Therefore, we can say you are probably from this place. It's dangerous, but it's also sad. And so, again, I think that people need to understand the power that we possess and take that into consideration. When I say power, it just is really, I'm really just saying that we are gifted in a way that other ethnicities are not, because of our proximity in genetic expression to the people who were designed to live here before all these amenities became available. If you were going to build a human that would more likely be able to survive in a primitive time, African American people, our genetic expression leads us to be more durable when there wasn't these large areas of where the human element hasn't been involved or evolved. Like, we have homes, we have neighborhoods, we have indoor schools, indoor pools. Like, we have all of these conveniences. But if all the lights went out and you still had to eat, you're going to want this person who walks the night scavenging and foraging for food and figuring out a way to make it work. Yeah, it's weird. But like I said, I believe that this is a key microcosmic expression or representation of the ills that plague us as a society, and more specifically African Americans, and that's more specifically after that African American men, black men. It's very clear that the legacy of the Willie Lynch speech is being represented within the hip hop culture. And that's a scary thing. But it's also something that needs to be addressed so that it can't be perpetuated any further. Loyalty, love, light, friendly competition to promote growth and improvement, an increase in skill level. I think all of those things are valuable. But once it becomes corrosive, divisive, and basically it deteriorates the fabric, because this is our way of passing down wisdom, of passing down lessons, and we're destroying it. And we're destroying the faith in it and the faith that we have in each other by the way that we're conducting ourselves within this space. And I think we need to do a better job, especially those that are leaders within the hip hop and the black media spaces. This is something that actually really needs to be addressed before we don't have another way to talk to each other, and then we'll really be lost. Until the next time, hit the like, subscribe, comment button, turn on those notifications, and I'll see you next time. Peace.